Most businesses only focus on growing and expanding, and they give little to no attention to their exit strategies until after exit is staring them in the face. Learn here at Boosting Business Value, brought to you by Blue Sky Business Resources. You'll discover how to shape a more durable and saleable business, and how to implement a powerful, well-planned, and rewarding exit. Join Dr. David Gruder and Jason Tazinkowicz as they deliver actionable tips for lower middle market company owners, executives, and their trusted advisors. Find out where your business currently stands, how you can meet your revenue objectives more reliably, and how to grow your venture to the next level, all with a smooth and fruitful exit in mind. Here are your hosts, Dr. David and Jason.
Well, welcome back to the Boosting Business Value podcast. In this episode, we're going to delve into a hugely underappreciated source of conflict, bad feelings, culture deterioration, and productivity deficits in companies that is best called impact literacy, or in this case, impact illiteracy. Hi, for those of you who are new to this Boosting Business Value podcast, I'm David Gruder, the business life cycle, exit planning, and post-acquisition psychologist for Blue Sky Business Resources. And with me, as always, is my ever-brilliant co-host, Jason Tazinkowicz, Blue Sky's Chief Operations Officer and all-around wizard of operations and back office.
Hey, thanks for that, David. Great to see you again. And I'm excited about this topic because it's one that you don't hear people talking a lot about. So let's start off with just kind of answering the obvious question, which is, what is impact literacy? So
Great
for me,
question.
Yeah, thanks. I've been working on that one all day. So for me, it really comes down to starting out with recognizing that no matter where you fit in an organization or a social group, your actions have an impact, and understanding how that capacity to have an impact just by being, and an even greater impact when you start doing, can inform and enlighten your decision-making process is really what we're talking about here. I know you've got more to add to this, Doctor.
Yeah, well, I'm going to add to it by just providing contrast between what you've just described as impact literacy and what impact literacy isn't. So the opposite you could call impact illiteracy. And there are two versions of that. One is in psychology called learned helplessness, which I'll unpack in a second. And the other is a form of tyranny. It's an ends justifies the means tyranny. So let me describe each of those. Learned helplessness is programming that a shocking percentage of people have been indoctrinated into, that basically teaches them that nothing they do makes a difference. Nothing they can do makes a difference. And what that means is two-pronged. First of all, nothing positive I do has positive impact, and nothing negative I do has negative impact. And when somebody is carrying that programming that says nothing they do makes a difference, that form of impact illiteracy is technically in psychology, as I've said, called learned helplessness. The other variety, common variety of impact illiteracy is a form of tyranny, a form of being over-controlling. And it's the form of being over-controlling in which decisions are made and enacted in mindset that's an ends justifies the means mindset, where all that the person is interested in is a specific outcome, regardless of how much damage the means by which that outcome is achieved creates. And that's collateral damage. So this kind of mindset that certain leaders have, that the ends justifies the means and collateral damage is inevitable and unavoidable and irrelevant, and don't bother me about collateral damage because we got done what I wanted to get done. That's a form of impact illiteracy as well. Those are the
If you think about it, that's kind of a form of learned helplessness as well, right? Because the side effects, the damage that is caused, we're helpless to control. So let's just focus on getting to the end zone, right?
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah. So that's our framing around what impact literacy is and isn't. And so we want to go next into three big challenges that we see with impact literacy. And the first of those is that not all impacts are going to be readily recognizable. Most of us don't understand how decisions can lead to collateral or lagging damage or benefit. In other words, at the front end, a lot of people are so focused on the results they want, they don't spend enough time looking at the question of how they're going to about attaining those results in terms of the impacts, the collateral damage, or the collateral benefits that can be obtained or can result from a particular way of achieving a particular goal. So it's really important at the front end to get in the habit with your team of identifying ahead of time what the potential negative and positive impacts are of a particular decision and of a particular way of achieving that decision or that goal. And then also the ongoing willingness to discover as you're enacting the plan what the unintended positive and negative impacts are so that you can adjust the plan so that it attains the goal that you're wanting to attain without the collateral damage that a particular approach to reaching that goal reveals itself as producing.
Yeah. And, it's really important. I think that people that get good at this impact literacy, they start to realize all of the interconnectedness, right? They start to see that I know that my team is doing this and it's good for my team, but I'm not going to, from here on out, forget that my team is part of a bigger whole. And that as we move in this direction, we're going to be tugging other stakeholders, other members of the organization or of our community in our direction, whether or not that's to their benefit. And so what you're talking about and what I was going to bring up really kind of tie into this, getting out of the decision myopia of thinking, I want to go here and that's all that matters, to thinking, if I go here, what else is impacted? And to that point, the big challenge in that is that we all as people, to varying degrees by the individual, are acutely aware of the impact that is placed upon us by the actions of others and the decisions of other groups, but we don't have the same perceptive acuity with regard to how our behaviors, decisions, and actions do the exact same thing. And so one of the challenges is taking the blinders off and looking at who else can be impacted by this. And one of the great outcomes as you get better at impact literacy is being a lot more holistic and inclusive in the decision-making process.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said. And the last thing we want to cover in terms of big challenges with impact literacy is something that I see as a rampant pandemic around the world these days, and including, of course, the United States, but not limited to the United States, which we could summarize as expecting pass cards. And what this means is that too many people have been trained to believe that if they learn they've had unintended negative impacts and they can justify why they did what they did anyway, that takes them off the hook about having to repair those negative impacts. And so the illustration that I most like to use to describe that is, if we're really good pals, let's say Jason and I are good pals and we're physically horsing around together one day.
That good pals thing is a stretch, Doctor.
I know. Good pals. We're just moderate pals. Huh?
Our listeners only have so much imaginative capacity, okay? Let's keep it realistic.
And So if we're physically horsing around and I accidentally step on Jason's foot with 15 pounds of pressure, his foot is going to register the exact same amount of pain that it would if I stepped on his foot on purpose with 15 pounds of pressure. Impact is impact is impact, regardless of intention. The old story about the road to hell or the road to perdition is paved with good intentions is absolutely true. That a lot of people really have been trained to believe that they don't need to do a repair or make future commitments to handle future similar situations more effectively if their negative impact in a current situation was unintended. And that's just flat wrong. It's a culture killer if you have people who carry that belief.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's be clear, because I think that a lot of people get confused about this intention thing, right? If you cause harm unintentionally, the pathway to remediation is different than if you do it with malicious intent, but there still has to be a pathway because harm was done, right? So we're not saying that if you ignorantly or unintentionally or even well-intentioned cause harm, that doesn't mean that you should have to go through the same steps to repair the damage that was done as you would if you did it with malicious intent. It's a different path, but the work still needs to be done because damage was still done.
Yes. And what I want to piggyback on about that is to be really blunt in saying that if you discover as a business owner or executive or manager that you have someone on your team who is ill-intended, the intervention is getting rid of them. The intervention is firing. There cannot be room in a healthy organization for ill-intended people. On the other hand, what needs to be normalized is that well-intentioned human beings are perfectly capable of and often do make, all of us often do make what I call loving mistakes, loving intention and a mistaken expression of that intention that has unintended negative impacts. With people who have good intentions and unintended negative impacts, there's a way to work with them to help them elevate their impact literacy so that those unintended negative impacts don't continue to happen. And we'll get to that in a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, it comes down to respect, right? If you hurt somebody that you respect, no matter why that person got hurt, you're going to care enough because of the respect that you have to help make them whole. That's really what we're talking about here. So enough of kicking that horse. Let's go into the roadmap for success. So, the first thing that I think we need to do as individuals in order to start having this impact literacy and making decisions with an impact awareness is just getting better at assessing impact. And we've kind of talked about this, but understanding, one, who is potentially going to be impacted and how big is the biggest circle of people that are going to be touched by it. And then what are the smaller circles of impact within that? And as you're looking at this range of impact, you can also start to think about the timing of impact, right? If you throw a stone in a pond, it's going to cause a ripple in the center that is big and immediate, but it's going to take a few minutes to get to the shoreline, right? And that ripple may be smaller. And so understanding that there's not, like Doctor said earlier, there's not always this immediacy of seeing the impacts. And so as we look at and work at getting better of assessing the range as well as the magnitude of the impact that the decisions we're contemplating can have, we can start to contemplate better decisions.
Absolutely. And tying in with that, when we discover that we've had unintended negative impacts, the success roadmap really calls for elevating our capacity to enter into no shame teachability, to enter into a state of openness to learning without our inner critic beating us up and shaming us to death. Because
or our outer critics.
or outer critics, right? That's really very true. But our susceptibility to outer critics is in direct proportion to the degree to which our inner critic is the boss of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that other people won't try to shame us. But if we have the upper hand on our inner critic, other people's attempts to shame us really won't land very easily. And
Agreed.
The idea here is that it's human to periodically make loving mistakes, to have unintended negative impacts. There's no crime that's been committed. All that's been committed is humanness. And what that calls for is teachability. It calls for a willingness to discover the unintended negative impacts that we've had so that we can take steps to repair those and prevent them from recurring in the future. But in order to really be teachable, we have to be free of shame. Because if we go down a shame spiral when our human imperfectness is revealed, then it's going to make it very hard for us to be teachable. We'll get defensive and justifying instead.
So true. And I think it's important as we're talking about the success roadmap that we also we've talked a lot about the negative impacts and collateral damage, but we also can sometimes in our human moments accidentally have positive impacts. Sometimes we delight people without even knowing what we're doing. And we have, this positive collateral damage, which is extraordinary, but we can either have that positive collateral damage, be glad it didn't go the other way and move on, or in this impact literacy vein, we can be mindful. We can pay attention to, hey, we just had a better impact than we thought we would. This is good. What did I do? What happened in this process that allowed for this unintended positive consequence? And how can we build that into our decision-making awareness for the future? And I think that that's a really important thing about this is being more deliberate about avoiding negative consequences, but also of cultivating more positive outcomes.
That's so important because it's kind of like the opposite of the old cliche of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which is that if something emerges, if a discovery emerges that there is positive collateral benefit that comes from a choice that's made or a goal that's pursued, that where the certain positive impacts weren't known ahead of time, then if it's better, repeat it. That's the opposite of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it's unintentionally positive, repeat it again in the future on purpose.
Exactly. And, that leads us into this idea. We talked a lot about good intentions and how that's not the path we want to pursue, but instead figuring out what accountability capable commitments are for you. And that means we've all heard people say, if it's great, I did it. If it's wrong, blame them. This is one of those situations where we want to be able to say, before we even embark on implementing a decision we've made, we want to be able to say, if it goes well, we did it. And if it doesn't go well, we learned. And, that's the mindset that we have to have. Again, it goes back to that no shame teachability. It goes back to that respect for the others affected by this impact sphere. But at the end of the day, it comes down to we're making the decision. We're going to be accountable, and we can live with that accountability no matter which direction that we didn't foresee it goes in.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's a perfect segue into what I consider to be the heart, the core of what teaches individuals and teams impact literacy in any setting, and especially in a business setting, because that's what we're focused on in this podcast. And it's a 4-step process that I've facilitated for a very, very long time. And it really is remarkable how much constructive results and benefits it produces in a relatively short period of time. It's what I call the collaboration breakdown repair process. And it's got 4 steps to it. The first step is each person that's involved in whatever the breakdown was says what their unintended role was in that breakdown. And this is part of the antidote to if it doesn't go well, blame them. What my unintended role might have been was that I took someone's good intention statement as though it was an accountability capable commitment when all it was a good intention. Or I thought, well, I really don't need to get progress updates from this person about how they're doing with their part in a project. And lo and behold, my not having requested those interim updates results in my only learning that things really got off track long after a lot of damage occurred. So the principle here is that all conflict is either co-created or co-perpetuated, one or the other. We either co-create the conflict, or if the conflict wasn't co-created by all of us, if it has been allowed to continue, all of us have been responsible in our own particular ways for allowing it to continue rather than dealing with it as soon as it arises. So the first step is each person says what they're, and again, we're talking about well-intended people here because the ill-intended have been eliminated. So among well-intended people, each person says what their unintended role was in the breakdown without shame, without justifying. Here's what I didn't do or didn't say, or what I did do or I did say. And then the second round, everyone takes a turn saying what their unintended negative impacts were from their unintended role, again, without shame. And what you're hopefully hearing in what I'm describing so far is that people aren't telling each other what the other person's unintended roles and impacts are. Each person is saying that about themselves. Then the third step is each person goes around the circle and says what they're going to do to repair their unintended negative impact to whatever extent repair is possible, because sometimes situations are such that the damage is done, there's very little repair to do, and sometimes there is some repair to be done. But where the rubber meets the road is in the fourth and final step, which is each person goes around the circle and says what their commitment is, what their plan is for handling future similar situations, a realistic, doable next step better, more effectively than they knew how to do in this current situation that they're dealing with. And when everyone emerges understanding from that conversation, understanding what their own and everyone else's commitment is for handling future similar situations more effectively, what happens is that a conflict or an implementation breakdown or a collaboration breakdown actually leads to greater teamwork, greater commitment, greater culture well-being and productivity than existed before having had this conversation.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that final accountability piece, because when you take accountability with your team, it forges that bond, right? Where the team starts to, they'll test the waters, they'll see if they can trust it. But because you went out there with it, because you made it public, it's a stronger bond than that won't happen again, and it has to be clear, defined, and articulate in order to really have that power. But it's something you can get a lot better with over time. So thank you for that.
And by the way, I want to piggyback on one thing there. The notion that it won't happen again, get over it. It'll happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that I have a half a dozen human moments at least every day.
Exactly. The thing to shoot for is it will happen differently. It will happen more effectively next time around. And then the next time around, you'll do this again. And out of that, you'll be able to do things even better than this next time around in the following time around. So the kiss of death, if I hear someone say, I'm sorry, it'll never happen again, all my red lights go off. It's like, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry is a good beginning for a conversation, but it's the opening that leads to responsibility taking and creating a new plan. If it doesn't lead to that, then I'm sorry is worthless. And the statement, it will never happen again, is just delusional.
It's a blow off, right?
Yeah.
It's like saying, my bad. You're not taking accountability when you say my bad. You're just blowing off the issue.
Right. I promise that this kind of circumstance will arise again, but here's how I will handle it more effectively when it arises again.
Exactly. All right, doctor, time for you to bring it home for us.
Okay. Well, we'll do that together with 2 takeaways from this episode, and I'll do the first one, which is that business owners, executives, and managers would be very wise to accept that even the best intentioned people that they hire likely have little to no training in impact literacy. And the bottom line here, the big takeaway here is you can either complain about the fact that impact literacy isn't generally taught in our culture, or you can take responsibility for providing this training to the people you've hired because you've been satisfied in your interview process, in your selection process, that they really are well-intentioned people and teachable people.
Yeah, and if they're not teachable people, don't hire them.
Absolutely.
We talked, David, a lot on this show about these self-actualization concepts of growing as a leader and growing as a culture. And one thing that they all have in common is that nobody comes out of the womb exceptional at these things. These are learned behaviors that require practice. They require training. And the more you and your team practice these things, the stronger you and your team get. And with that strength comes whole new opportunities and outcomes that you can realize and achieve. And so that's the big takeaway for me is this is learned behavior. This is practiced organizational skill that will open new doors and perspectives within your team.
Amen, brother. Bring it on home.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope you guys had as much fun as we did today. On behalf of David Gruder and myself, thank you so much for being a listener. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for, supporting us on social media and anywhere else that you share good information with your colleagues and peers.
Yeah, spread the word.
We really look forward to that. We do read comments and feedback and use that to shape new episodes. Please subscribe so that you don't miss a single one of our great discussions. We do have some really exciting interviews coming up this summer, so be there for that. And then finally, we'd like to invite you to take advantage of a new free service that Blue Sky Business Resources has launched. It's a series of micro surveys that are designed to help you gauge the quality of your organization in several strategic and operational metrics. They're free to take. You can take them out in your own time. You can find them on our website at blueskyadvisors.net. And again, we hope that they're as valuable for you as they have been for us. And we look forward to collaborating with you in the future.
That's all for this episode of Boosting Business Value. May your new learning result in the smoothest and most profitable exit strategy for your business. With the right knowledge and guidance, the sky's the limit to what you can do. Do not miss an episode by subscribing to the show. And if you want to learn where your business currently stands, we also have free key opportunity assessments. Find all of them at blueskyadvisors.net/podcast. Thank you for joining us. See you on the next one.